All right, today we're jumping into one of the biggest questions out there right now. How do we handle artificial intelligence? It's this massive balancing act, between letting innovation run wild and managing some very, very real risks. So let's get right into it.
Think about it this way. Is AI regulation a brake pedal, something that's just going to slow us all down? Or is it more like a guardrail, a safety feature that actually helps us go faster by keeping us on the road? That's the core question we're really going to unpack here.
And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. Businesses are stuck in this weird paradox as we speak. Get this. A recent survey found that a wild 93% of execs are convinced that generative AI is going to bring massive value to their companies. But, and this is a huge but, at the exact same time, over 60% of them say all this uncertainty around the rules is actually forcing them to pull back on their AI investments. The potential's right there, but the lack of a clear playbook is already hitting the brakes.
And that brings us right to the heart of this whole thing, the AI balancing act. We've got to figure out a way to fuel all this incredible innovation while also putting up some common sense safeguards to build trust and, well, prevent things from going wrong.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about why we're even having this debate. What's actually happened that's pushing this global conversation about putting some rules in place for AI? This is the case for guardrails.
Let's start with a number that's going to make you sit up. $25 million. That's how much money a single company lost in one ridiculously sophisticated scam that was completely powered by AI.
But here's what's really wild about how they did it. The money wasn't just wired in one go. Nope, it was sent out over 15 separate transfers. That little detail just shows you how totally convinced the employee was that these were real orders from their bosses.
So, how in the world did they pull this off? Well, the scammers used AI deepfake tech to cook up a fake video conference call. They didn't just impersonate one person, they faked multiple senior execs, including the company's CFO, all on the same call. It's a scary good example of how AI can take old-school scams and turn them into something that feels like a real, face-to-face command.
But hey, the risks here aren't just about money. Not even close. Sometimes the danger is baked right into the systems we're building, and it can have some seriously personal impacts on people's lives and their futures.
A classic example, and a really famous one, is Amazon's AI recruiting tool. As you can see here, they built it way back in 2014. They trained the AI on 10 years' worth of their own hiring data, which, let's be honest, was mostly data about men. And guess what happened? A year later, they found out the AI had basically taught itself to be biased against women. It would actually penalize resumes just for having words like women's in them. They tried to fix it, they really did, but by 2017 they had to scrap the whole project.
And look, these aren't just one-off stories. There's a public database that tracks AI screw-ups and harms reported in the news. By the middle of 2023, it had already logged over 2,000 different incidents. We're talking everything from self-driving car crashes to people being wrongfully arrested because of a facial recognition error. So, what's the big takeaway here? The push for regulation isn't just happening out of thin air. It's a direct response to a very real and growing list of failures that show we probably need some basic ground rules for safety and accountability. Okay, but that's only half the picture, right? There's a whole other side to this. There's some really strong arguments that rushing into this could just create a giant mountain of red tape that ends up strangling progress before it even gets started. It really boils down to this tension. You've got one side saying, we need some basic rules for safety and accountability, and the other side is worried that those good intentions will just create a mountain of red tape, stifling innovation and bogging everything down in bureaucracy. This is the tightrope that policymakers are trying to walk right now. So let's really dig into the strongest arguments from the folks who are worried about overregulation. First, the big one, it'll stifle innovation. Second, they worry it creates a regulatory moat. Basically, the costs of lawyers and audits get so high that only the big tech giants can afford them, boxing out all the startups. Third, the argument is, hey, we already have laws against fraud and discrimination. Just use those. And finally, there's a big geopolitical angle. If democracies tie their own hands with red tape, they could fall way behind authoritarian countries in the AI race.
There's a great analogy from the World Economic Forum that really nails this point of view. Trying to regulate the AI technology itself, instead of how it's used, is like giving a speeding ticket to someone for owning a fast car even when it's safely parked. The point is, regulate the dangerous driving, not the car.
So, this leads us to the big question. Is there a middle ground? If we're not trying to slam the brakes on progress, but we want to make sure it happens safely, what does smart regulation even look like?
Let's go back to that car analogy for a second. The
The goal isn't to ban fast cars, right? It's to make sure that they all come with things we now take for granted, like seatbelts and airbags. Those things don't stop you from driving. In fact, they make it safer for everyone to get on the road, which builds trust and lets more people participate.
To really get our heads around this, there's a super helpful concept called the AI risk stack. It's just a simple way to break down all the different ways things can go sideways into separate, more manageable layers.
Basically, it breaks down risk into 3 key layers. First, you've got performance. Super simple. Does the AI actually work right? Is it accurate? But that's just step 1. Then you have governance. Is it fair? Is it legal? Can you even tell what it's doing? That's where stuff like the biased Amazon hiring tool fits in. And finally, you have security. Can bad actors misuse it or attack it, like with that deepfake scam? A smart approach has to look at all 3 layers, not just the first one.
Okay, so if we use that risk stack idea, what would a smart regulatory approach actually involve? Well, first, it would be risk-based. You'd apply the really strict rules only to high-stakes situations, like medical diagnoses or hiring, not a one-size-fits-all mess. Second, you'd cover the whole lifecycle of the AI. You audit it before it goes live, and you keep an eye on it after. And third, you'd have transparency when things go wrong, so everybody can learn from the failures and not make the same mistakes.
So when you put it all together, the big goal here is to find that Goldilocks zone. A set of rules that isn't too tough, isn't too soft, but is just right to let safe, responsible innovation flourish.
And that brings us right back to where we started. The whole point of smart rules isn't to be a brake pedal that slows everything to a crawl, it's to be a steering wheel, to give us the control we need to aim this incredible technology where we want it to go safely.
So what's the game plan? What does a real path forward look like? Well, first, it's about being targeted and smart, focusing the heavy-duty rules on the really high-risk stuff. It's also about giving companies incentives to do the right thing, not just punishing them when they mess up. And this has to be a global conversation. We need international teamwork to avoid a total mess of conflicting rules. And maybe most importantly, we need to educate everyone, from the general public to the people building this stuff, about both the amazing potential and the very real pitfalls.
Which, leaves us with the one question that really matters most, and it's a tough one. We can all agree that high-risk AI needs careful oversight. But where, as a society, do we actually draw that line? Is it hiring, getting a loan, law enforcement, medical advice? Figuring that out? Well, that's the next great challenge for all of us.